This is the Nomad Tarot limited reprint. I'm not quite sure whether this makes it second edition or what, but the bag looks like this, which is interesting because it's quite different from the sort of canvas, natural fiber looking bag that I saw with the mandala, or what is the world card in the deck. This feels more like thin cotton with what looks like prints of a drawing, which I assume is the artist's own drawing, I'm not sure. So this arrived without the book. And so this is the deck itself. This is the Fool, and as you can see, it's like he's an adult. He's a fully grown adult, but he's sleeping. Like, it reminds me of an egg. It reminds me of a baby in the womb. It's just the beginning of something. So this is the Magician, or the back's the same. I was told that the book adds very little to our understanding of each card. It reminds me a bit of, I saw a couple of pages, it reminds me of The Wild Unknown, where it says a few words, but it gives a little glimpse of where the artist is coming from, but perhaps not enough for it to be a book. This is the Magician, and I quite like not to have to worry about the book, because a lot of bags don't fit the book in them, obviously, because they are, created only for the deck. And then I just find it really, I sometimes lose track of where the books are because of the way I store things, and so I am usually quietly relieved when I don't need the book or when there's no book with it. So this is the Magician. I'm assuming this is all tattooed on him or her. I think it's a him. But I also see this as a reminder that everything that we need is already within us, and it is a matter of realizing those. So I quite like that. This High Priestess, I initially didn't quite know what to make of it, but recently I read from the Mysteries of Mary handbook about this image of the deer's antler blooming with flowers, I think. And I actually have a pendant, one of my favorite pendant, from one of the wonderful sacred jewelry creators. And I didn't realize that these guys were sacred jewelry creators. I just see them as artists. And I think there's a whole symbolism around antlers and growth of the antler that is likened to that of a plant, because it reaches out from the head upwards into the higher realm, perhaps, or something like that. That's the message that I got from that book anyway. And so here, that's what I see, is that sense of the earthly being reaching up into a higher realm, beyond nature. And if that is beyond nature, this is nature itself, I suppose. If that's a lot of the times the Empress are depicted as the gateway between the realm of the spirit, or the realm of the non-manifested, to the realm of the manifested, as in, that birth canal. So as much as I'm a little bit impatient, as I use that word quite specifically about pregnant women used as the embodiment of this gateway of manifestation, it's kind of fair enough. The Emperor. This is the Emperor. So all these tools of navigation here, again, very intuitive. The High Priest, as you could see him towering over the mundanity of daily lives here, this life on the planet. And he's like towering above all that. And the man bun over here is this kind of cultural symbol of our time, suggesting someone who is very aware of not only life, but the philosophical underpinnings around life. And so that is the High Priest. Perhaps the High Priest of our time is those who are very socially and naturally conscious, I suppose. And the man bun, I suppose, is that kind of a nudge to that sense of perhaps stereotyping, perhaps generalizing, but it is the popular symbol of our time, I suppose. The Lovers, I really like how yin and yang this is. It feels like they are part of the same thing, but they're distinctly two separate I think those are clams. I'm not sure, but yeah, I like that. It's the more abstract take of the lovers, and I quite like that. The Chariot here, I see salmon. For some reason, I don't know my fish, but looking at a school of fish, I think of salmon. When I think of salmon, I think of going against the flow, of fighting to survive, going against the current. And I have been quite taken by the by the Neoplatonic take of the Chariot as depicted by Robert M. Place in his Sevenfold Mystery. And so that really jive in with that really well. Going against the current, going not so much against our nature, but going against natural impulses so that we can be who we are truly, so that our nature is not who we truly are. It is by flowing against our nature that we become who we really are. That's how I see the salmon going against the current for their survival, because I think they have to swim upstream to procreate, don't they? To continue as a species. And in the back of my mind, the Sevenfold Mystery Chariot, that reason controlling will and appetite as the key to the evolution of the soul, is very much in the back of my mind when I see that. And in salmon, and how they have to swim upstream in order to survive. Strength, this is like a mother hen, and in Julian of Norwich's book, she described God as mother, and I know that according to some discussions around that, apparently in the Bible, I am not familiar with the Bible, the Christian holy book, there is a description of God as mother, or as mother hen. Not only the shepherd, a very male dominated livelihood back in the day, but as a mother hen as well. And in our normal, perhaps in the subsequent decades and centuries after the time of the very first early Christians, back then, of course, there weren't Christians, there were just another Jewish sect, I think. This talk about God as mother, or as mother hen in particular, has been diminished in a way. But that's a topic for a different video. Going back to the strength, is that idea of real strength that is of mother hen, the strength of nurture, the strength of mothering, the strength of a mother instead of a lion. So that's a really nice, I think, take on things. The Hermit, when I see this, I see the phrase lone wolf came to my mind. So the Wheel of Fortune, just the wheel, and it's interesting that there is this scissors, a pair of scissors that are cutting that rope. There's all the knots under here, and there's all the smoothness here, and then boom, it's cut. It's dangling loose, and it's the thread of fate, I suppose, is what comes to my mind. Justice. We don't like to see killing or ending of life, but one life feeds the other. The ending of one life makes it possible for the other life to continue. I'm not quite sure what to think of the four feathers yet, but to me the cycle of life is just. Justice is not so much legal justice for me, it's not so much retribution. It is more to do with this kind of justice. It's just life, and it is right. When things are just is when things are right, according to the larger karmic, cosmic balancing of things. The Hanged Man here seems to be a mental suspension rather than a physical one, and I quite like that. And with all the symbols at the back there, I'm not quite sure what they are. Are they ravens? I heard a lot of ravens being, in the 4 years that I study tarot, I come to understand that raven holds a special position in spirituality, or at least in Western spirituality. Death, again, this is the depiction of death, which I never really thought about when I enjoy the fruit of the labor of various craft and artists, silversmith. I have an array of pendants with lots of skeletons and mushrooms on them. And of course, it only dawned on me recently that mushrooms grow very, I don't know I'm not a very botanical person, but I think if something died and buried underground, that particular soil becomes very fertile, and you usually can see mushrooms in these fertile soils. So that, again, that idea of the death of one allowing others to emerge. And of course, the butterfly is a symbol of transformation. Temperance. All I know about octopads, is that they are very, very smart, but it's almost as if they can't communicate that silence. They can't talk. They don't have. I don't think they make noises. Not, at least not the ones that humans can hear. Their facial expressions are very limited, but they're actually quite intelligent. They're very sentient, and so a temperance perhaps is that sense of, that filled with intelligence but hampered by the ability to express them, or they're hampered by something that wouldn't disallow the fullest expression of that intelligence. And so temperance, in a sense, is prevention from the fullest extent of satisfying an form of expression, one form of an expression or another, tempering it. I see temperance as more than that. I see temperance as a process of alchemy, as a process of merging two distinct elements and giving birth to a completely different element. And perhaps that's true for the octopus. I don't know much about the octopus. There is an interesting book called, I can't remember what it's called. I'll put the link down below, about an octopus, and I think about somebody who worked, specializes in octopads, yeah. So the devil as this a sense of trap. This, I think, I see spider webs as a tool of living, a tool of life, a tool of survival, but it's also a tool of death, because if you're the spider, it's to feed you. If you're not the spider, then it's a trap of death. And so the devil is very much the other side of the same coin, the other side of who we are. The devil isn't out there, the devil is in here. The devil is usually the darker or the shadow side of light. It isn't something else. So, but that sense of, it evoked in me both death trap and also food source. So I quite like that. The tower is house that burned down, or storage or something here. And for some of you who have experienced natural disaster, you would know that there's nothing to question the sense of false security that we all have, granted by constancy of situations when that situation is shaken to the core, such as earthquake, which happened a lot where I live, especially in the last few years, flooding, which happened a lot when I was growing up in the tropics, the explosions of volcanoes. Again, in Indonesia, there's a lot of volcanoes. They call that area a ring of fire, I think. The Asia Pacific, there's a Pacific Rim or something. Again, my geography is pretty rusty because it's been a while since high school. But, having what you build, this is what we build, this is what nature have built, that is what we build. Having that destroyed, whether it's a tower or home, is the essence of this archetype, so I quite like that. The star, this is basically a reminder of, let me just separate this because this deck's getting a bit heavy. So the star, this reminds me of the Rider-Waite-Smith and some of the Marseille decks, and so haven't really don't really have much thoughts around this for now. The moon, it's a moth, and I've seen depictions of moths in terms of the more like the more obvious side of the butterfly. So if the emperor is a butterfly, the queen, the yin is the moth, or if the sun is the butterfly, the moon's obviously depicted by the moth. It's this more, they are at night, I believe. They usually thrive in the dark. Again, I don't know. I don't know my flora and fauna very well. And of course, there's that hint of the crayfish there from moon cards of old, and so I quite like that. So it's quite intuitive. For those of you who said that you don't really need the book, just judging from the 2 pages that I've seen of the book, I tend to agree. This is the sun, a new day, a new dawn, manifestation, realization, as the sun is a sign of a new day being birthed, or the birth of a new day, a new chapter, a new life. To me, the sun is a sign of the manifestation of a new realization. So that's quite nice. Judgment. This reminds me of Lars von Trier's movie, one of them. He's such a interesting director. A lot of his movies are really, for some people would consider his movies to be out of whack. I can't remember what it's called, but there is this the planet or the moon just got closer and closer and closer to the Earth, and there's this family and some family drama that unfolded as this moon or this planet just get closer and closer to planet Earth. This reminds me of that, and where it's either you're in a new planet, or if that came into contact with the planet that we live in, existence, life would be obliterated and a new one would emerge. For me, judgment is a new life, or a new existence, a new reality. Following up from, if the tower is the end of one reality, judgment to me is the beginning of a new reality. So it has nothing to do with judgment, the word as such, but with the biblical story of judgment, which is why a lot of people have trouble with this card, or the title or the name of this card at the very least. And for me, all I can think of is that you are resurrected, you are awakened into a new reality, not only a new world, as a new reality. And then of course the world. So the old printing, again, not sure whether there are how many printing before this one, this limited reprint here, have this mandala on what looked like, creamish sort of a canvas like bag, and I quite like that actually. But so here we have this, so I like that as well. So now this is what some people consider to be a pip deck. So let's have a look at the feathers. Now what I kind of like about this deck, and I've seen this deck 2 years ago, but because I wasn't sure what to make of the pips, I like the aesthetic, but it wasn't good enough for me. And then a year or 2 ago, I have tarot in black and white, which video I will link either up here somewhere or down below. In that, I've learned that the ace is not only the beginning or the seed of all of its suit, but it is also the culmination of the suit. And so, as you see here, 9, 8, 7. So this is counting down from the king, because that's how the cards came to me in this particular deck. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, look at the 1. So in the tarot in black and white, the 1 actually came after the king. So in tarot in black and white, all the suit starts with 2, and then it goes all the way to the king, or whatever is the highest, or whatever is that at that end of the succession, and then it has the ace at the end. And so if you think about it, if you think like so, and so you can see this is quite interesting. Child of air, and then knight, and then it got bigger. Queen, and then it just got bigger. King. So I like the size progression, because to me, the court cards are cycles anyway. They're cycles of developments. And the Margaret Peterson tarot taught me that the court cards are cyclical, like so. So it goes like that, and then back here, and it goes round and round like that. And so at least for this particular suit here, let's have a look at the other suits. That's perfect for me, at least. Small, large, large, large. And this, if you want to put it off after that, depending, or if you want to put it at the very beginning, like so. The seed of it is also the culmination of the whole suit. The whole suit culminated in a seed. The whole plant is in the seed, and I quite like that. So let's take a look at the water. So again, let's take a look at the quartz. So it's like, so okay, so this is less of size growth, but there's one tiny wee thing, and then there's that, and there's that, and then there's that. So I'm not quite sure how to make of this just yet. For those who have the book, perhaps you could comment down below whether there's any insights in terms of what the author is saying about how this works. Or a lot of people say it's intuitive, and so again, the way I see quartz are progressions of cycles, and I don't know my mollusks or my sea creatures very well, but you know, it'll come to me. This, yeah, I'm not quite sure really. Is this one here a larger shell in reality, in life, and this one is a smaller one? And so that if you are familiar with the species here, I think this one's usually about that large, and this thing's usually about that large. No bigger than, yeah, I could be wrong, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know at this point. But that's, so that's a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I really like the ones. I have not made made up my mind about the others here, because when I read pips, I read their structure, not only their numbers. More than anything, I read their structure. So their composition becomes important. If you read pips numerologically, then it doesn't really matter, because a 4 is a 4 is a 4 is a 4, right? So maybe this might be the deck that might force me to start incorporating numerology into my reading pips. But for now, I read them structurally. I see how they sit against each other. So for example, let's have a look at the 4. See the 4 here? I like the 4 of feathers because it forms a box, stability and stagnation. Here, I can't see stability and stagnation. It's just 4 shells. So yeah, I may have to, I mean, I am very much open and quite am having fun with more intuitive reading. As you know, if you've seen my videos, I've sort of started playing around with more intuitive reading with the Ophidia Rosa, with one of those older decks, majors only, but intuitively at the moment I'm not picking anything up. But I've only just looked through this because I received this, I don't know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I can't remember this. But I just haven't had time with having to do my taxes and all that. I just haven't had time to play around with this one. So King, Queen, Knight, and Child. Let's have a look at this. Child, Knight, Queen, and King. So King is a bunch of what do you call this? Several of those. Here it's just the one over here. And here is, it reminds me of how fluorite grow. They grow very in a square, sort of, they form cubes. And this one here, Child of Earth, I'm not quite sure what this is. But putting aside, I might need to know what it is for a minute. It looks like something's enclosed, like a little pod. So that very much plays into the idea of a fetus, of an egg, of a seed. So I quite like that. So these two I can instinctively pick up, but it is from here to here that I'm not quite sure what to do with just yet at this point. And let's have a look at the rest of the suit. So there's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 10 is actual 10 kinds of things. Here it's just all sorts of things here. The 9 here, tiny crystals, but lots. The 8 here, bigger crystals and less. 7, the crystals are sinking at the bottom, and that is the Child, the Knight, and the King, isn't it? I have no idea. I'm not necessarily saying that's the author's intention, but that's there. And then that's the Knight there. Maybe she's just using the same picture files. So maybe that's over there. I don't know. Maybe that's over there. Yeah. Can be anything really. So 10 here. So that's the Knight. That's the King. I think I'm just making stuff up at the moment, but that's all right. 5. Some would argue that's what tarot reading is. Just making stuff up as we look at pictures. Okay, so that's that. And then now we go to fire, or traditionally this is stars or baton. King, Queen. That's interesting. King, Queen. Upside down. And the Knight is large and sideways. So I suppose yin and yang maybe. Knights and fire. So Knight of Fire is the fire of fire. So it is the largest of its element in the court cards. Maybe. A water of fire. Water of fire. So it's almost like the opposite. Air of fire and earth of fire. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, possibly. So let's have a look at the other, see if there is that kind of association we can make. So water of water, fire of water, water of water, fire of water, earth of water, air of water. Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I'm forcing things a little bit at the moment. But that is it for now. And once I use this a bit more, I will definitely come back and do a review. So that's my first thought and a flip through of the Nomad Tarot most recent limited reprint edition. Bye.